The areas I'm going to cover are the historical context, the cost, the essentials, and the variables, and also the area that really concerns the young people or the young adults who responded to my opinion poll are this idea of spending so much money on a befitting burial. So they want us to put it in context to balance befitting life versus befitting burial. And also, I will be using some of my experience because I have buried my father and my father-in-law. So I have some real life experience to throw into the mix. Hello everyone, my name is Mabel and I'm popularly known on this channel as Auntie Mabel. I'm currently doing a series of videos to address the barriers that you're likely to encounter when you are learning a new language or learning about our cultural heritage or all other aspects of our identity. So welcome to my channel. If you're coming across this video for the first time or coming across my channel for the first time, please just go back a few videos or use my playlist to look at this particular group of videos I'm currently doing. Today's video, I'm going to be covering another topic which was requested from the opinion poll from mainly our young adults and some of our adults as well, more mature people as well, is on our funerals and our, let's just say, our burial ceremony, especially the ones we classify in Nigeria as the celebration of life. So as we all know, weddings and funerals is a big deal in our African culture. Some of these, my young adults, especially those who have never been to Nigeria, who were born in diaspora, who spend all their life in diaspora, and are really keen in learning about our cultural heritage, every aspect of it. So this is another aspect that they have raised some questions and concerns, and they just want clarification because they have seen various aspects of it. Some of them not so pleasant, and some of them are exciting, especially when they watch the videos of some of the celebration of life in Nigeria with the pallbearers dancing to music, and it's very colorful. So I just want to use this video to put things in context. So however, I know, as you all know, Nigeria is a very has varied traditions and cultures, so it might be different in the part of Nigeria you're from. Obviously, I'm going to try and use what I know from my part of Nigeria, from which is the Esan culture. So as you know, my channel is dedicated to the Esan language, learning of the Esan language. So but this series of videos I'm currently doing kind of cut across all our Nigerian cultures and traditions. So these are the areas I'm going to be focusing on. First of all, they also want to know about the historical context. Again, what is actually the required expectation of a funeral in Nigeria? And what are the variable costs? Why has it become so expensive these days that they already see their parents borrowing such a huge sum of money to do these celebrations? So that is one. And secondly, they also want to know, all right, is it really necessary to take family members home? There's just so much variety of things that are going on that they have seen it always causes a lot of confusion or a lot of disagreement that takes time to sort out. First of all, the historical context. So I can only speak from my own experience as a child and as an adult. So when I was growing up as a child, when an elderly person dies in the community, obviously those in that compound, the children, the grandchildren, will usually start crying, and that no matter how old the person is, that will set off the whole community. Neighbors will gather around and everybody will start weeping and crying and all of that. Obviously the adults and the elders in the community and the middle-aged men, as they are classified in my community, they will all go into action, and they will usually just do a simple coffin at the time, and the person will be buried, or depending on the time of the day, will be buried either that the next day. So they will usually say that is the announcement of the person's death. And then obviously this mortuary thing wasn't common. I grew up in a rural part of Nigeria at the time, which is not rural anymore now. So yeah, then this burial, this what they call, classified as the second burial or the full burial, will be postponed. The expectation is, as majority of the people then were farmers, so they will expect to plan, maybe all the children, the daughters that have got married already, so everybody will expect to, the expectation is they will not set a date at a later date to do the full burial. Sometimes they could drag into years. So, but during this period of this burial time, it could drag up to about 10 years and it's not done. Then if that parent now dies, who hasn't buried the father or the mother yet, these children, the children of that parent, maybe they themselves, maybe their parent died at 100 or 80, so as at the time the parent died, they might already be in their 60s, and by the time, if they add another 10 or 20 years, they now might become 70 or 80, they will now die, and probably their children will now be maybe 50, 60 as well, or maybe 30, between 30 and 60 at the time. So the expectation is that these people and these grandchildren will be expected to bury their grandfather or grandmother first before they can bury their own father or mother. So let me try and explain here the very key thing there that I'm aware of in Esan land. The key part, there are other bits and pieces you have to do in between, which a lot of people now say, oh, they are Christian, they don't do them anymore. But I think the core thing that I know in part of Esan I grew up in, I am from, is that during the actual burial ceremony, there are, while you are entertaining your own guests and socials, and maybe they will say, oh, you go to church, you do the waykeeping, you do the social dance and all the expectation after interment and all of those things, which I'll go into later on. But there are core things that is expected from the community. So this comes again, like I said in the bride price. So this burial ceremony again, there is expectation. There's something that needs, even on the day you're doing your social, where you are, after interment, you are now doing your party. You decide to, while you're entertaining your friends and your guests, there's a key expectation that the elder people in the community, in your community, they all have boundaries on how they classify their community. The eldest people in the community will be expected. There's some expectation of how much food should be cooked for them and the drinks that should be provided for them. Then the next group of people will be, they will call them Igende in Esan, or the part of Esan, but they are called Igende. That is the middle-aged men. They all know how they classify themselves into these groups. Then the third group of people that will be expected to be fed, and they have a certain amount of drinks and food that should be provided for them, are the Anywhere, which are the daughters of the community. So these could be daughters who are married and not living at home, or could be daughters who never married and are living at home, or it could be daughters who either married and for some reason they are married, either they become widowed or they are married, they move back home. So these are just the daughters of the community. So you could be daughter, you could be of any daughter of any age. Obviously, children are not really classified. These are adult daughters of the community. So these are the group of people that are being fed. So everybody will come in that during that social, that everybody will be dancing and doing their own thing. So these people sit in their own group. There's a way that they cook some certain food to give to them. So when some people want to bury their father, and they say they have to bury their great grandfather and their grandfather and their grandmother first, or their grandmother first, sometimes this group of people they have to feed, and there are key things they expect you to do for the community, that there's a list again, an expectation of what you have to do for the community. These things can be done, it can be done in a monetary value. So some people will just say, okay, how much do you need for the daughters, for the middle-aged men, for the adult, for the old elders, and any other thing in between that the community required. So some people will now add it all up. They will say, okay, it's 100,000 naira, for example, it's 200,000 naira. So that money will be given to those people, to that community. They will share it among themselves. They know how to dispense it. So then you will carry on and plan and bury your own father or your mother. Now, I hope that's clear enough. Sound a bit complex, but it should be straightforward. If you watch this video a few times if you really want to understand it. So that's the basic thing. Those are the essentials. Then what are the variables? The variables now are the new stuff that people now do. You have to sew a setting where the pattern from those days as children, or as when I was a child, when we buried my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. I know I must have been about 10 or 11. So what generally would be done, a simple cloth like Ankara would be sold by every members of the family. We still have a family photograph we all took. So the uncles, that's my dad, his brothers, his sisters, which are my aunties. They're all our cousins, all of us, the grandchildren who are cousins, the great-grandchildren. Everybody would take part in this ceremony. And we also this simple Ankara. And that's generally what we wear throughout the 3 days they used to do. Those days they actually used to do the ceremony 7 days. When the burial ceremony, especially when it used to be first burial and the second burial, it used to be done, 7 days before it's now kind of reduced to 3 days ceremony. So which I think is a good thing. We have to acknowledge the changes we have made. That is good. So when it used to be 7 days, I will have to explain first of all, in Esan land, the week days were originally being calculated on market days. So which were 4 weekday market day. So for example, I will start by counting from Ekpoma, where I'm from. So the Ekpoma market day will be the first day of the week, while the next day was Irwa market day. Then the third day was the Ekpoma market day. And then they have a day they call it Dizede, which was like a day of rest. Then before the Ekpoma market day again, I think that's the same day as Uromi market day. If I'm wrong, those from Uromi, please correct me in the comment section. So I think it's also Igor market day. So there are some part. There's every locality that have a market day, and have obviously some of the communities are double up to have more than one community having a market day. So in a nutshell, the 4-day market day was Ekpoma market. The one we usually use in Ekpoma is Ekpoma market day, Irwa market day, Irwa market day, then Edizede, which is the rest day, then Ekpoma market day again. So the burials were usually started on Irwa market day. The community I'm from, this still varies from community to community, even within the Esan land. So take note of that, please. The burial ceremony will start on the Irwa market day, which is the day after Ekpoma market day. So obviously it's expected that the things you're going to use for the burial, you've bought most of them on the Ekpoma market day. So obviously it's fresh produce you used to use then. So then you have the Iwa market day, that's the day they will say Edena Muwuto. That's the day you start it, you start it, that's the beginning. So they will always announce this with gunshots, and there will be, obviously used to put those traditional special made gunshot that used to be done on the ground. Yeah. And they were done in a very safe way. So those of you who are health and safety enthusiasts, don't start panicking. So then the following day, which is Ekpoma Market Day, was the day they entertained the Ekpoma, which is the older members of the community, and they classified this into groups, which is the older members, which is the seniors. Then they have the middle-aged men as well as a separate group, and they have the daughters of the community who are either married and away from home. They will all come back for this ceremony when a family member is being buried from that community. So it used to be a family affair, community affair. So this is where some of the cost used to come from as well. Then the Edizede, which is the third day of the market, the Nira market day, that's the third day of the celebration, usually a low-key day. So by now, if I must say that they have now, sometimes this food they used to cook for this group of people, which is the oldest people of the community, the middle-aged men, and the daughters of the community, they now say some communities now pay it in monetary value, so they don't have to cook that food physically again for them. But when we did my father's burial, that food was cooked and entertainment was done on that Saturday after the night wait keeping, which was used to be the main party at the time. Then the next day will be the Ekpoma Market Day now. On this market day, those days they used to go to the market to actually throw gift and money to the crowd, and people will be catching it. So I think it became very, due to health and safety risk, that had to stop after some time. But I remember during my grandfather's one, that was done, and I witnessed a lot of things where it was done, and a lot of people there used to be people who are very good at catching those things. Even I may say this as well, I know the animal lovers might get angry with this. I think when it's a male that is being buried, they used to actually throw a live goat, and the person who catch the get hold of the head of the goat will usually be the person who they will say caught the goat. So but all of that have now stopped due to the risk. You see, Nigeria will still do some level of risk assessment. Then the next day will now be the Irwa Market Day, which is now the 50th day. And this day is when the in-laws usually will do their visitation. So for all the daughters of this mother of this family, which is the mother of the father who is being buried, will now come with their, usually they will be doing the olden days, they will be doing their own burial ceremony where they were married, their husband's place where they are living, where they are married to. Obviously, those days everybody tend to used to marry locally, and not to, maybe most Asian people used to marry within Asian community then. And only few people will marry like in Owa or Esako, or only very few will even marry outside of the state completely. So yeah, so they will come on that day, dance, and come with, if you are far, they come in a vehicle with their husband's family to come and pay homage to the eldest son of the family. I hope that makes sense. Then on the 6th day, that's when we say is the Zedegbewo. That's the day it's like the day you are now resting and start, because you're supposed to have observed these 7 days. So that's the day they will start preparing for their guests who came, because a lot of people will come from other friends and family from different places will come to help to celebrate and do the cooking, the killing of the animals, and all the rest. There's a lot that goes into it, obviously, 7-day celebration. So I think that's the day, is the Gbewo, and that's the day they start getting ready for the guests to start returning back to their places. And all those who came to help will also cook and eat and take some things home to their families. So you can see it has always been expensive, but it's just that although we cut it down, we have reduced it to 3 days. We have now started spending money in other areas that is making it to become more expensive again. For example, Those days, the coffin used to be very simple because it was prepared immediately by local coffin carving person, carpenter or whoever, and there was no so much display like we do now. So the person was just laid to rest a day after. And I must say this as well, in Esan land, there are some market days that they don't bury people. That various, I don't know, I'm sure it vary from community to community again. Like where I come from in Ekpoma, they don't bury person on Edizede. That's the day before Ekpoma Market's Day. So if, for example, somebody died on that day, they will have to wait till the next day before they bury the person. So but if somebody died the day before, because they don't want to keep it to the 2 days later, they would rather quickly bury that person that day before. So there's a lot of rules, kind of rules and regulation. I'm sure they had their reasons. If we dig back into the cultural context more deeper, then somebody might be able to explain why these things were done then. And I'm actually working hard. I'm trying to encourage as many people as possible. I've spoken to Saudi Agbe and some of my elders and uncle in my family who gave me some of all this content. Both of them actually gave me most of this, and my brother as well, who is very vast in this knowledge of our cultural heritage. So I've also some of my brothers actually. So it's not just one brother. So I'm actually trying to get a way where we can write all this down in a book, so that at least there is some of these things written down properly in a chronological order, probably from birth to death. What are the historical context, how things used to be done, and what are the ones we have modified to the way we now do it today. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. Then the other aspect of the historical context is what some of the young people, young adults, or even more mature people who are in diaspora or even who are in many cities in Nigeria, is this idea of having to carry the family members' remains back to their hometown, which can cause so much, especially when the person dies in diaspora. And I have to say this again, in the Esan culture, the tradition is the daughters, for example, the older women, no matter how old you are expected to be brought back to your family compound to be buried. That's the culture, but things have started changing now. So that is still this, and that is still the same context where some people, if they didn't make a will, they will not insist that. I know it's not really Esan. I know the Igbos. I know we have had some people who have died in diaspora here, and where they have said the person never said anything. So they insist, the family members will insist that's the family members back will insist they have to take the corpse home, which can be very expensive and very traumatic, add to the trauma of the children again, and especially the wife or even the husband or the wife of that person. So by the Esan, in Esan, things are changing slightly now. There are some people who will say, oh, they have lived with their husband in a particular place, they have built their home and house together, this is where they raise their children. So, and that can be discussed, but traditionally, it is your immediate, the immediate younger brother of the lady that is expected to receive their coffin, or receive them, they don't call it coffin, receive their body back home for burial. So, but if that person has a house, they usually would bury the sister in the house, in the front of the house of that person, because I think the idea really was that to ensure that, I think it was kind of a safeguard. The uncles and the people I spoke to, especially that gentleman, Saudi Agbe, as well, they said that it was supposed to be as a form of safeguard. When they give their daughter to you in marriage, it's supposed for you to know that the grandchildren from that daughter is still part of the family of where the daughter is originally from, and they want, and also it's a way of the husband thinking, knowing that if you maltreat their daughter, then your community and your family will not be able to save face when they have to bring the person home for burial. So it was just kind of a check and balance to know that that person is not gone for good, and they still have a family who still at their back, who still looking after their well-being and welfare, and also to encourage the grandchildren, that's the lady's children, that the maternal home is still very important to them. There's even some community they will feel that. They also used to feel that if for any reason the father of those children dies early or anything happens, so it's also for them to know that the uncles and the relatives of their mother, or even if their mother dies early or whatever, that they are always there for them. People always used to say that if you run it from enemy, you hide in your mother's community, you are being protected and being safeguarded. So yeah, that's another historical context. So I hope some of us, so it's not every aspect of our culture that is actually fetish or that is unchristian, that is not that irrelevant. So when we are getting rid of most of them or some of them, we should know the reason why we are doing that, and why we are getting rid of them, and the one we choose to keep. We should also know the reason why we keep them, why we are doing them, and have a choice. Again, this comes to a choice. I just want people to be aware, to be knowledgeable, so that they know the reason why they're actually doing these things. So that, for example, you can start, I think the young adult, I think it's to actually encourage you to start having dialogue. I know it's a very sensitive topic in Africa and in Nigeria in particular, what I know about, is that many people don't really want to talk about anything about their death or their burial or their will. They just say, oh, God forbid, God forbid. But it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So, but I think with the matured ones, with the adults, the parents and grandparents right now, we should be enlightened enough. We're in a culture, in a diaspora, where we see that people start writing their wills from a very early stage in their lives. So we should also incorporate this into our will and start discussing with our children and start telling our family members, okay, when the person passes on, you don't mind, please let their children, they just let your family members know that you don't mind you will prefer to be buried in diaspora, because you don't really want to give the stress and the grief to your children to start having to take your remains home. Yeah. And also, if you even can write it in there to say you want a simple coffin, you don't really want all this expensive one that is just going to they're already losing a parent no matter how old they are. So then you are going to be putting thousands of pounds or dollars or euro or naira. These days they spend hundreds of thousands of naira or of even millions. They say some coffin now go up to millions, and that thing is just going to be buried in the ground. It's just money being, I know we feel bad, we want to give, let's give our parents, again, like I keep saying, let's give them befitting life and not befitting burial. And even if we have to raise that money, let's use it to support the children or grandchildren or family members who were depending on that person, who are now losing out, or even do something in memory of these parents instead. So now, the key question is, some of our young adults, those who live in Nigeria in the cities and those who even live in diaspora, have seen their parents being taxed. I don't even know how to say it. It's beyond belief that when their grandparent dies, and these are some of the grandparents they never even get to meet where they were alive, then their parents are going into debt, because they are asking, they might be asked to contribute maybe thousands of pounds, euro, or dollars, depending on where they are. So if they are in Nigeria, they might be asked to contribute hundreds and hundreds of thousands of naira. And a lot of people are now getting themselves into a lot of debt to do this burial. Also, the part that really grieve not just the young people. I know this has been a common discussion that's been going on for so many years now, that there are some siblings that when the parents, the mom and dad are alive, or the uncles and the aunties, or it could be your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, when they are alive, some daughter-in-laws, some son-in-laws, some sons and daughters, cousins and nephews, they will never even ask of these old people. And some of the children in diaspora actually are desperate to have been able to visit home before this new evil that befalling our community. They've never been taken home to see these grandparents. So, but when they now die, that's when they are now dragged home for these burial ceremonies. And they are now made to sew this, and are made to wear that bead, and are made to dance and sing around and celebrate and give this person a befitting burial. So some of them are just saying, this is hypocritical. Some of us, all these parents that are doing this, their parents or their uncles or aunties and uncles that are doing this, they didn't really feel they did enough to give these people a befitting life. So what the young people, what young adults are really saying, and other people out there are saying, don't let your parents, mother or father-in-law, or auntie and uncle and elderly relative, don't let where they live, where they were alive, don't let their grave and their coffin look more beautiful than where they actually lived when they were alive. And I was having a chat with my brother recently. He was saying, it's something he has been saying to people he knows, that why should people, if anybody want to give him anything while he's alive, they should give it to him. He doesn't want anybody after he's gone. Then you're going to be using 2 million, 500,000, 1 million to buy a coffin to bury the person. You people should really think of it. The irony of this is that coffin is only seen for a few hours, and it's going to be buried on the ground, covered in the sand. There was even a post recently where somebody actually buried their father in a brand new car. So I know some people will say, oh, the poor will always be among us, but there are some children in that family who are not even able to cannot afford to go to school. There are some who cannot. Sometimes let's try and do something in the memory of our parents rather than this befitting burial syndrome that's befalling us again. Even better, self. Let's give our parents-in-law, our uncles and our aunties, let's give them a befitting life. Even if you don't even have much. From time to time, just give them a phone call. I'm sure they will appreciate it. Or even if it's just 5,000 naira from time to time, I'm sure that will gladden their heart rather than using that 5,000. I'm not saying you shouldn't spray people. Or don't say it's me who go and say people shouldn't spray people when they are burying their parents. So please do what you like. But let's do something for these people too when they are alive. That is just the moral of this story. And on the other hand, please, 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 don't borrow. Don't get into debt just to bury somebody, just to give your parents or your older member of your family a befitting burial. If you were your parents, many of us will get old one day. We all pray that we get old, don't we? Would we prefer to be given a befitting burial or a befitting life? You decide. So on that note, everyone, please leave me comments as usual. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And share. Give it a thumbs up. You can see I've got another head wrap today, and I've got another earrings. And all of this are still from Mary's Lifestyle TV. She's also another YouTuber whom I mentioned in my last video. On that note, everyone, Babulu, which is thank you in Esan, and Vakimboy.